more and more people are going to speak with, especially our doc. There's still the stigma there. Most of it is internal to that individual, remembering the past and knowing how it was. Luckily, a lot of labor laws, especially in the world of law enforcement, have changed, and the repercussions aren't there for going to see the doctor, because now I sue you if I'm having an emotional time or having a hard time wrapping my head around it, and I go see my doc, and doc says, "Nah, you probably shouldn't be carrying a gun right now, and we need to put you on desk duty." It's hard because, as you know, we're alpha personalities, and having to give that up and not being out there in it. But once you become more emotionally intelligent, you understand that you might need it, and it's for your benefit and everybody's benefit around you, because now you're not an asset, you're a detriment, because your head's not where it needs to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, EQ gangsters, what is going on? I am with the one and only Big Billy, and let me tell you how I met this guy. So, you know, we kind of live in the same hood, so in the same neighborhood. So come to find out, not only is he kind of a pseudo neighbor that lives in the same neighborhood, but he's an LEO. He was a former law enforcement officer for a number of years, military background, and I'm going to let him share his background. And I know some of you guys are going to be watching this on our YouTube channel. Some of y'all are going to be listening to the podcast. Thank you guys for the support, for the encouragement. I always try to bring you the best content with some amazing people with amazing stories that are connected in some form or fashion, or impacted in some form or fashion by emotional intelligence. And Billy is formerly a law enforcement, so not only a cop for a number of years, but a law enforcement negotiator, which is, again, a whole nother ball game. And so I thought, man, he would probably have some really interesting perspectives and stories on emotional intelligence from working with people that maybe have some emotional intelligence, and in many cases probably not a lot of emotional intelligence. And so anyway, so that's why I'm like, man, I think Bill would be great to talk to. And he's a super guy. And again, really excited to get into his story, his background, and share with you all. Billy, thank you so much for joining us, brother. Totally appreciate, again, your time. Let's start off, man, just telling us your story, your background.
Well, Noble, thanks for having me. It's 24 years in the Air Force as originally security police. We changed our name a while back for security forces. Multiple deployments in there, anywhere from Panama to Iraq and Afghanistan. I was a canine handler while in the Air Force for 13 years, 24 years. Promoted out of that to a leadership position, as you know. I wrote a desk for the last few years of my career. Still deploying in there, but in a different capacity. After retiring, I went and I joined a sheriff's office as a deputy, start off in the jail. And I tell you, if you think you can talk to people, work in the jail for a while. That shows you where you're lacking, but also makes you better at just interacting with people of every different walk of life, from millionaires, believe it or not, to just people just with, not even two nickels rubbed together. So I worked in there for about a year and a half, and I went to patrol and was out there for a couple of years. As you said, I was a negotiator with the team, with the office, one of three teams we had on negotiations team. So I was on one team, and spent a little bit of time with the regional explosive bomb unit. So I'm married, 5 kids, so always busy. That's really me in a nutshell.
Awesome, Billy. Thank you for sharing your background there. So, you had mentioned all different walks of life in jail, from, folks that don't have two nickels rubbed together to millionaires. Fascinating. So I guess I never would have thought that you would be running into millionaires in jail. But, this is something I say on my podcast a lot, right? Is that every day and in every interaction, we are on the receiving end of everybody's emotional intelligence or lack thereof. So that includes the EQ of your fellow. So, you're on the receiving end every day. So obviously when you're in the military, of your military folks, me too, I was a former Army guy, and also of your fellow cops, right? Your fellow LEOs, which some have EQ, but some don't. I know in the Army, there was no prerequisite or assessment to say, well, let's see if this guy has EQ before we, before we either A, let you in, or even worse, which happened all the time when I was in, become a leader, right there. Even to become a big cheese leader. I met non-commissioned officers, NCOs in the Army, and officers in the Army that were absolutely emotionally clueless. So, you know, just because somebody is a cop, just because somebody is a leader, a colonel, a sergeant major, does not mean that they have emotional intelligence. And so, and then you're also dealing with the public. And, just what I know being in this space now for 4 years, most of us, and to the tune of, I would argue, 90 to 98% of us have never been trained on how to identify or manage or process our own emotions. You are typically dealing with situations where people are not typically calling you because of good reasons, right?
Right.
So first question is, what was it like interacting with other cops that had low EQ?
I can't say it. I mean, it's tough because like you said, the military didn't put a big emphasis on it, and law enforcement didn't. It wasn't until Iraq and Afghanistan started happening, people coming back, that we started noticing an issue with, we called it resiliency, how to deal with the bad stuff we saw and how to cope with it and deal with it. At least for us, they masked it into a thing called Defender's Edge. I went to a course that allowed me to learn what we know now to be emotional intelligence and EQ. But before, it was just wrapped up in a resiliency. So I became a resiliency coach, I guess. We really didn't have a title for it. We just went down and learned about what we're talking about, self-care and understanding why you feel the way you feel and embracing it, recognizing it, and things to deal and to cope with it. Fast forward to the law enforcement world, same thing. Well, we followed into resiliency, but don't really spend a whole lot of time on it. And I'll tell you, it was less than a one day block of training in my academy of 6 months, talking about emotional intelligence, under the guise of being resilient. And it is, I mean, it's all about resiliency, understanding how to deal with what you're dealing with, and having just a little bit of knowledge of it. It just, man, we're really doing a bad job at this, because we coach and we preach. I say we leaders, recognizing when you're not getting enough sleep, recognizing when you're not getting enough to eat, recognizing when you're eating poorly, don't eat bad, right? But then you're running call to call to call to call. And I can't tell you the number of times I'm driving from call to another call, eating a sandwich and chugging a Red Bull to stay awake. Everything we talk about not doing, right? So I see it in them, and it's like, man, this is terrible that we're doing that to ourselves, and we're keep going. And, a work-life balance, right? We got to have that. But then you're working 14-hour days, 15-hour days, a 4-day cycle. But hey, we don't have enough manning, so we need you to come in. I myself, and I know a bunch of my friends out there did it. They need us. The public needs us. We need to fill those seats, or else instead of having 9 guys, we're going to have 8 guys. And I know if I don't go and help, they're suffering, right? Which is adding to their stress and their lack of sleep and their anxiety and all that stuff. So you take it on yourself in the mindset of teamwork, not realizing what it does to you on the backside, not realizing that you got to say no sometimes. I see it with all of them. And so we've talked, and a lot of people are recognizing it and listening to your podcast and other podcasts. We do have a doctor in our office that we'll talk to and stuff, but she's in the office, she's part of that whole machine. So it's tough seeing them breaking down and gaining weight and stressing out. And I can't say any of the friends I have are alcoholics per se, but a lot of us, get home after a really crappy day, and we're going to decompress. We're going to have a drink and just sit in the dark and have that drink. And on one side, I'm like, well, it's not a terrible idea, but you can't do it every night. That's where a lot of guys are going. So it's tough seeing that they're not able to have the right tools.
Right. No, that's a great point. And a lot of us have coping mechanisms, well, we don't know that they're emotional coping mechanisms, but we just call it coping mechanisms that are a consequence of our inability to identify, process, manage and process our own emotions. And so we will go to, for me, I've been a food addict for most of my life. That's how I've coped with a bunch of my emotions for many times. I was a people pleaser addict for most of my life. And so, it a lot of us turn to very unhealthy coping mechanisms. Now, some of us have healthy coping mechanisms, but I think that's the goal, is how can we learn how to cope more productively and health more healthy, so that it does not have a negative compounding effect on our lives and our ability to be a family member and a professional with whatever that is, in this case, being law enforcement. This may be whether from your cop hat or your negotiator hat. What are some tools or some ways that you addressed or handled conflict and high intense emotional situations?
I'll tell you, it's a work in progress. Even for myself now, even though I talk to people about it. We deal with a lot of suicidal persons. So for them, I mentioned earlier going call to call, and it's really that way. I spend probably more time per call than a lot, even though I still took more than my fair share. But I really like to interact with people. I really liked dealing with the youth, juveniles, teenagers, because I didn't have the greatest childhood, and we run into a lot of guys and girls that are in their teens that don't have any support out there. Mom and dad are alcoholics, they're drug users, they're in jail, they're sitting in foster homes, they're sitting in homes that our foster homes supposed to be there for them, but they're not. They're just there collecting state, county money, and housing these kids. So they have no one to talk to. So one tool I give these juveniles is, technical terms wise, I'm not a rocket scientist. So I'll dumb it down, and I just use it's a breathing technique and a visualization technique. I don't use it nearly as much as I should. I use it less than I preach people to use it, but I do use it. And it's essentially is thinking of a place that's like your favorite place in the world, somewhere where there's no negative connotation to it, right? Everything about it is good, feels good. And for me, personally, that was my grandmother's place. She lived in an old 1800, early 1900 farm that was just awesome. Or I'll use where I grew up on a lake, because you get up in the morning and it's flat, birds are chirping, smells great, right? But along with that visualization is breathing, right? So you're laying in your bed, you're sitting in a chair, and you're just letting your body relax, and basically letting the floor of your bed absorb all that negative energy to flow through it. You're just relaxing your body and letting it go away from you while you're visualizing and listening. Because if you do it for 5 minutes, you're going to do it. You're going to hear those childhood sounds. You're going to smell that air from that environment, right? And you're going to see everything going around you. And that's something I did in my patrol car after a really bad call. It's something I do on periods when it's been a bad shift and I'm laying in bed, and it's really just not avoidance, but I put all the bad stuff from that day away to deal with it at a later date, or not to deal with it again, because many times, honestly, we're not going to go back to that. And I won't go into the bad stuff we see, but there's just stuff that you're not going to be able to deal with it. It is what it is, and it's done. It's in our past, and how am I going to deal with it from moving out, right? Just emotional with it. Most of that's really, I told you about some books I've read on combat and that stuff, that wrapping your head around bad things happen. It sucks, but it happens. And just knowing that and accepting that, and just, I can't say I always throw it to the back and disregard it, but I try. And that's what I explain to, young folks, or even husbands and wives that just got in a domestic, just got in a fight, or my partner that just got shot at or had to shoot somebody else, that's probably my go-to tool to use or to share with people. It seems to work really well.
That's great. That's excellent. And a tool like that, I think, is so important, especially when we may not be, self-aware, or even when we are self-aware. But like, I just wish I had, when I was emotionally clueless, which again has not been that long ago, 4 years ago, I wish I would have had a tool like that even prior to getting more self-aware, because that doesn't necessarily need a lot of self-awareness, in my opinion, because like hey, go to your happy place, basically, right? Well, that doesn't take a lot of self-awareness. Like, okay, what's your happy place? Well, it's in the mountains, or it's on the beach, or it's on the lake, or grandma's house, or whatever. And you can kind of incorporate all five senses into that experience and relax, pay attention to breathing. So really, that's an excellent mindfulness technique to kind of get yourself back to center, get recentered, so that you can move on to the next call, task, job, whatever. That's excellent. That's great. Okay, so the doc that you had there, did a lot of LEOs utilize her coaching services? Because I've heard, I talked to one guy on a SWAT team in the Midwest, and he's like, they also had a kind of a shrink on their team, but no, he's like, dude, nobody goes and talks to her, because if you do, now it goes on your record, and now you're on desk duty, and now you're screwed. So we just all suck it up, and we have to go monthly see her, but we just go to check the block and say, oh yeah, I saw the doc, but I'm not talking to you because, right, of this stigma. Is that stigma still there, or are people really are LEOs really starting to utilize or become more aware, like, man, I need this. I need this coaching, or this resource. What's it like nowadays?
I think in the beginning with her, from what I understood, it was just that a stigma, just like in the military, going to mental health, right? You're weak, you can't deal with it, you go to them, you're just trying to get out of work. I see more and more people going to talk to her. Now my relationship with her was different because she was part of my negotiation team. Negotiation teams are supposed to have a clinician on staff to deal with interactions with mental hospitals and stuff if we need that person's medical records, right? So, and she could also coach us on to what she's hearing, because no matter how much training we get as negotiators, we're not going to be doctors. And there's stuff they learn in their degree plans that is very useful to us. More and more people are going to speak with, especially our doc. There's still the stigma there. Most of it is internal to that individual, remembering the past and knowing how it was. Luckily, a lot of labor laws, especially in the world of law enforcement, have changed, and the repercussions aren't there for going to see the doctor, because now, yeah, I sue you if I'm having an emotional time or having a hard time wrapping my head around it, and I go see my doc, and doc says, nah, you probably shouldn't be carrying a gun right now, and we need to put you on desk duty. It's hard because, as you know, we're alpha personalities, and having to give that up and not being out there in it. But once you become more emotionally intelligent, you understand that you might need it, and it's for your benefit and everybody's benefit around you, because now you're not an asset, you're a detriment, because your head's not where it needs to be. So people are more and more realizing that on a daily basis. I would say throughout the nation, from friends I have on different forces across the country, we need that outlet. We need that person. Sometimes just that person to talk to get that out. It might go on your record, but not always. And the only time it really definitely will is if they have to pull you off the line and you can't sit in a car or work your floor because what's going on. But get back to work, and after you've dealt with your situation, and you're good. Leadership is starting to understand that, and individuals starting to understand that you got to talk to the professionals and get that help, so you can get back to be not just functional at work, but in your everyday life. Because
Yeah, that's right. No, that's right. That's great. And there's so I have this system that I use, and I've shared a bunch of times on my podcast and other podcast interviews I've done on. I call it Go Aped, APED. Acknowledge what you're feeling. Give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling, which you acknowledged in the first previous step. Express what you're feeling through journaling. Write it down. And then D is discuss it with somebody else, but make sure you discuss it with somebody that's safe. APED, acknowledge, permission, express, and discuss. And something that you said is, man, I think is so not I think it's powerful. It is powerful because there's a lot of research to back it up too. That there's a lot of therapy, a lot of catharsis, a lot of healing in just verbalizing to somebody else that's safe what you're feeling. Just talk. They could shut up and not say one word and just be two sets of eyeballs looking back at you, and hopefully doing some active listening, showing that they're tracking with you and they're engaged in the conversation. Even if they don't say anything, there's just therapy in communicating it to somebody else. So that's great that number one, the stigma is starting to change, but also that folks are starting to get more confidence in sharing how they're doing. Like, hey, I'm sucking today. Hey, Billy, I'm sucking today, bro. I'm sucking today. And it's not like, okay, well, no, but here's the 3 steps that you need. Like, dude, just like my wife's been trying to tell me for 20 years, Noble, I don't need you to fix my stuff, dude. I want you to just freaking understand me. I'm like, really? But I have 3 easy steps. And she's like, screw your easy steps, dude. I want you to understand me. Or even more important, I want to feel like you understand me, right? So no, that's great. I'm glad that dynamic is changing. Let me ask you this, Billy. What do you feel has impacted your own emotional growth journey the most?
I can't put it to one exact spot. A lot of things through the last few years. And it's taken me a long time to not know it because I've been taught it. I knew what was going on, just recognizing it, accepting it. Like you said, admitting that there's something there, right? That training I took through the military for the Defender's Edge was really one part that said, wow, I'm experiencing these things. I'm really bad at these. For my caffeine intake was off the charts. Like it would kill a horse. And I didn't realize it, how much I was taking in a day until I sat back. It's like, holy crap. And I know that's a small thing. People, think, what's caffeine? It's coffee. We all drink it, but not the amounts I was consuming just because I was overworked. I was overworking myself, not just at work, but with school, trying to get more and more education and just in my head, getting better to be better, and then working long hours at work. And in turn, I was neglecting other parts of life. To be honest, it's only been the last year that I really started focusing down on it and being like, man, what is going on? Why am I feeling like this? What's making me angry a lot and not breaking out like I used. I mean, I used to be an angry person, and I still have my moments, but more and more over the last couple of years, I've gotten that under control. But in the last year, I've really been like, man, why? What's going on? And very recently, I met you and listening to your podcast, and there's been a lot, man. I'm just like, that's me. Why? Why am I like, the way I am? I shared a story with you a couple of weeks ago about education, right? I just literally yesterday finished my last class for my 3rd degree, 2 bachelors and an associates. And I'm like, why am I pushing myself in school this much? And it goes back to way back to, when I was a kid. I wasn't a dumb kid. I just acted dumb. I didn't do my work. I was bored. I was high energy, right? They, tried to put me on medication for ADHD when I was a kid. Didn't take it. I just found other outlets, sports, to use that energy. But forever I was, told you're dumb because I was getting C's and D's. You're not going to be anything. Came from not a rich background. So you're not going to be anything. You're not going to be anybody. You're always going to fail at life because that's where you came from and that's how you are. And it made me angry. I also shared that I got in a lot of fights because I beat up on bullies. I didn't like bullies. And then I turned into a bully because I just, that guy looks like he's a jerk. So I fought him. But all that stemmed back to being told I'm not going to be anything. I'm no good. I'm not worth it. So I not until recently, a few weeks ago, I'd say probably a couple months ago, I was like, man, I'm driving myself so hard for school because of that. I really think that's why it was. Since high school, I've been a pretty good, all my colleges, all my military courses, my academy for the sheriff's office, great grades, but I still felt I'm not doing good enough. I can do better. I can be better. It took me a while. It doesn't matter how much paper that says Bill Proctor has a degree. William Proctor has this associate's. He has this bachelor's. I was going to go for a master's. I'm like, why? I don't need it. It's cool. I don't need it. My drive is going to change. The reason for it is changing. It's not because I don't feel like I'm good enough or I'm smart enough anymore. If I pursue it further, it'll be for a different reason. So to nail it down, it's listening to people that I should have listened to all along. Hey man, you're sure drinking a lot of caffeine, or you're eating junky food, or why are you working out so much? I didn't realize the reasons behind it was emotional intelligence. Trying to make up for a mental void, I guess, is what it all came down to. Beating myself up and trying to be better.
That's massive, dude. Massive. And I'm so glad. I was going to ask you to bring that up next. That's great that you went into that. Most of us do not think about what we think about. We don't think about why we think about what we think about. Many of us there are many people, many high achievers and high performers and leaders and successful people are successful for very emotionally unhealthy reasons. And I'm so proud of you for making that connection, allowing yourself, allowing your psyche, allowing your, allowing yourself to challenge yourself. Man, Bill, why am I, dude? I've got, getting more degrees than a thermometer here. What am I, for what? Like, what's going on? And that, for a lot of people, is a scary question, because you have to look at yourself. And me, I know for me, I I was terrified when I started this journey, because I there was a reason why I intentionally didn't look at the proverbial mirror, why I kept that the door to my emotional vault in my emotional basement triple, quadruple padlocked, because I did not want to know what's on the other side of those emotions, and the answers to those questions. I did not want to know why I was, dude, why did you go to West Point? Why did you become a ranger? Why did you go to airborne school? Why did you become a jump master? Why did why did I do all these? Why did I become financially independent at age 30? Why did I become this successful business guy? All for emotionally, I won't say all, but a lot of the reason, as a people pleaser addict, everything I did was trying to get validation and affirmation from everyone else around me. And so that can be a very scary journey. So for you to have that courage to say, no, Bill, let me stop. And because the default, because the other thing too is, here's what many of us high achievers and leaders and stuff do. Our default, that our comfort zone, is to do, right. I don't whoa, reflection time. No, what, let me work on my degree here. I don't want to do reflection time. Let me just work on my degree, or let me get another certification. Or I've had some of the people, I think I told you when we met last time, was I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, Noble, what EQ certification can I get? Because I want to be an EQ coach like you. I'm like, bro, there's no amount of certifications that will trump a low EQ.
Right.
So get emotionally healthy. And in that process, if you want to get certified and all these degrees, whatever, fine. But do not get degrees at the expense of not getting emotionally healthy. Right. And so, because I've heard this from a number of people being in this space now, that they have run into so many dysfunctional psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, and therapists, because they've all got the degrees, but they're all emotionally unhealthy. And I say all, they're not obviously all emotionally unhealthy, but a lot of them chose the easy route of, let me just get my degree and get the intellectual skinny without working on some of the emotional and heart stuff that it takes to become, emotionally healthy. So anyway, all that to say, dude, so proud of you for being willing to do some emotional work. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, that you had shared with me, previously, as a result of you beginning this very intentional emotional growth journey, you also made a career change that you may not have made previously, because you weren't as emotionally aware of kind of what was going on. Can you share how your emotional growth journey has kind of led you to kind of making a career change?
So like I told you before, I felt like I kind of pigeonholed myself. I was a military cop for 24 years. So in my head, that's where I'm going, right? I did take a little break in there between military and this, doing a different administrative type job, and it just was not me. So I went back to what I knew, because it's safe, right? It's safe in the fact that I know it, I'm comfortable doing it. I like talking to people. I have no problem interacting with people. I like helping people for the most part. So I went back into the law enforcement world, and I went in with, I'm going to do this for the next 14, 20 years. Because of my age, I only had to do 14 years with the office to be tenured, get my retirement from them. And I was like, I'm going to do that 14, 20 years and help people on a daily basis. And it's going to be great. And it's going to be awesome. Ignoring all the stressors that go along with that work. So I jumped in both feet, and the job is awesome. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not being rewarded on a daily basis in law enforcement, you're not doing the job right. Dealing with people, talking to people. And I tell you, not people like, obviously talking to you is easy, but doing something that's easy is not, that's not the right way to go, right? You got to challenge yourself. And I love talking to people that did not want to talk to me. I loved talking to people and help people that were having the worst day of their life, and being able to give them some comfort, give them a shoulder to cry on, give them somebody that can maybe not understand, but will listen to what they're saying. In many cases, I walked in a lot of their shoes, just from where I came from. So that was awesome. What wasn't awesome was dealing with toxic leadership, being constantly asked to give, and the only thing I'm getting in return was a paycheck from the office. On one side, the satisfaction I got from helping people was enough. But when your employer takes advantage of that, it's not okay. There was a specific time here recently that just made me say, right now, that in briefing, we do a briefing before we go to shift, whether it be video or in person. I had a sergeant, we were talking about a topic that should be pretty simple, pretty standardized across the board, because we present things in front of courts, and those things should be standardized, whether it's myself or one of my fellow deputies or a sergeant or anybody presenting it. It should be uniform. The easy thing is the Supreme Court of the United States makes up her mind on some of those things. It says you will do X, Y, and Z. You will do this. And sometimes it's gray and it says you may, but it says you shall, you will, you follow those rules. Colorado revised statute says you'll do these things this way. So pretty easy, pretty cut and dry. I had a sergeant in a briefing tell me, I'm the sergeant, that's why we're going to do it that way. And I remind them, well, you're not SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States, and you didn't write case law, so that's not the right answer. And I've never been a leader to do that. You're going to do it because I said so. And the military was like that way for a long, long time. I just didn't believe in that type of leadership. There's a place for that. When you're getting shot at, you're going to do it because that's what I'm telling you to do. And we're not going to discuss it. We'll debrief later. But you don't do that on every scenario. And that's what this office does. It's toxic from mid leadership all the way up, and not recognizing when your people are burnt out, not recognizing when your people need time away from the job. I can't tell you a number of times I had a guy or gal come to work when I was in the military and be like, oh man, you look bad. What's going on? And it's, my uncle died, and blah, tell you what's going on. And like, hey, go home for the night. We'll cover it. Never happened here. And I'll tell you, I think it was last year, small scare, nothing big. I had a growth on my arm, didn't know what it was, went and had it removed. I'm thinking nothing of it. Results come back before I go to shift, and they said it was cancerous. Nobody cut out. But in my head, it was in my head. I knew I was off. I was so off, I didn't take my spare magazines on my gun belt with me to work. That's how mentally I was out of it. Not a single person in leadership recognized it or saw it. Hey, look, I can't be here. I forgot this. I forgot that. I'm not going to be any good to the public. I'm not going to be good to me. I'm not going to be good to anybody else. Somebody's going to die. But it took me going to them and telling them that. And that's something that should have been easily recognized. And they don't. It's about filling a seat to them and filling, not even filling a district, because we lack. It became a political game. I wasn't going to play with them. And after her saying that it's my way, that's why. I can't work for somebody that thinks that way. And it made me think about everything else that was going on, the extra hours. I was putting in a lot of time with the negotiations team. I'd get called on not every day, not every weekend, but I'd be gone for my entire weekend. Or I'd be out with the family. Hey, I can't do this. I got to go do this. I got to go in, or I got training, or I've got to do training for the bomb squad, or I got to do training for negotiators, or I got to go do weapon quals, or I got in service. They would bust my chops because hey, I'm going to be a little bit late to shift. Got my car, I'm in district, but I'm going to go to my daughter's dance recital. They let me go, but I'd always hear about it. But they're going to preach work life, take care of your family first. So I call it talking outside of your mouth. And they did that a lot, and I couldn't respect them for that. Made me internalize and really think inside, like, I don't need it. I don't need it. It's not good for me. It's not good for my family. And they're not upholding what they say is important to them. So it was scary. Like you said, it was a scary leap to go from everything I knew. Luckily, I happened to be on vacation. I got a phone call from a friend of mine saying, hey, this opportunity's here. You interested? Yep. Got a call a couple days later. You want it? Yep. And that was it. Their decisions, the way they treated us, made it very easy to make that jump, even though it was scary. It was still a little scary, but it made it very easy when you recognize your emotional intelligence is being affected by your work and by your decisions. Because it was a decision I made to go there and to do that and to work. And, I always made the excuse to my wife. And I mean, she stood by me through all the BS. And, well, it's my job. It's what I do. We got to accept it. But like you said, it was constantly ignoring the writing on the wall and ignoring the effects it was having on me and not looking internally and seeing how it was affecting me. So it's still a long journey for me. But yeah, it was those little things like that. I could tell you for hours.
Yeah.
And we've talked for hours about it, of those little things that just made me like, this isn't right.
So
we can be better.
Something that's is super powerful, and the one of the awesome benefits or blessings of growing your emotional intelligence and getting emotionally healthier is, and what's crazy is this is it, so it even sounds like it happened to you the same way it happened to me. The healthier I got emotionally, the more I started to learn about this stuff. I'm like, okay, what is EQ and what is all this emotional business and what's going on here? Increase your self-awareness. What does that even mean? As I started to dive more and more into that. What happened almost unconsciously is that I started to be able to create and implement personal and professional boundaries. And I had never, dude, as an emotional needy, emotionally codependent, emotionally dysfunctional dude, I not only did I not have any personal professional boundaries, I didn't know what they were. I didn't even know what they were. And so, and just as a consequence of getting healthier emotionally, I started to kind of do the same thing. For me, it was I wasn't an LEO guy, but I was in this business cult experience. As I started getting healthier emotion, I'm like, wait a second, that didn't sound right, and that doesn't sound right, and man, the way you're treating me sure as heck does not feel right. Like I started to get where before I just sucked it up and drive on, man. Like roger that, salute and execute, and okay, you're crapping on me, but I just have to deal with it because that's just how it is, or that's just how you are, or hey, look, you just got to deal with it because you haven't earned the stripes yet, or whatever the gaslighting was, right? The script that was in the organization. And it just sounds like your journey, you slowly started to realize like, okay, no, I'm not, okay, you said this is your way, okay, that's a boundary for me, right? And even though that wasn't your verbiage, but inside of you, you're like, okay, nope, that is a non-negotiable for me. And in the words of Shark Tank, right? And for that reason, I'm out.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's one of the benefits, man, and the blessings of getting healthier emotionally is you start to like, okay, this behavior is okay or good. This behavior is not good. And the other thing too that you said, you said it here, and also the last time we spoke, that I thought was so powerful, especially coming from the mouth of an LEO. If you are experiencing more stress and anxiety from inside the organization than you are from being a cop, something is like, that's a massive red flag, right? Like,
Hey,
you know what I mean? And so anyway, it was same thing for me. Like, wait a second. Like I'm again, as I started getting healthy, I'm like, wait a second, I'm getting a lot more stress and anxiety from inside this organization than from outside it. So wait a second, something's not right here. So how does all that hit you?
here's something that's, you mentioned something earlier, suck it up, right? So there's a phrase that we all heard in the military and a lot of law enforcement organizations. There's guys that are on YouTube and all these other places talking about this phrase. It's become almost like a motto for organizations: embrace the suck. I embraced it for a long time. And there's times that you have to do that. In combat, you have to embrace it. In an austere environment, you have to embrace it. It's terrible. You got to deal with it. You have to suck it up. Everybody's there dealing with it. But prior to leaving, somebody made that comment to me, the phrase, I'd rather just embrace the suck. And it dawned on me that what we're really telling people is to deal with it and suck it up. While I do believe that the phrase has a place, and I've been in some of those places, it's not every day. Our manning is crap in that office. It really is. And we know that. But where they're not working to get the bodies to fit the seats, they're worried about a political position, and they're worried about all this other stuff that's not important, leaving me in an area the size of Rhode Island by myself to patrol. And we did a great job at it. Don't get me wrong. The guys and gals out there are doing a wonderful job, and they're sucking it up and dealing with it. But when the leadership's not doing their job to fill those seats, I'm not going to suck it up anymore. I'm not going to embrace the suck. But that doesn't mean it's a continuous thing. You have to do your part to fix the stuff that sucks. And in this case, manning and leadership, or in that case, management, because there's very few leaders in that office. What really hit me was I don't have to embrace it because I'm not in a combat zone. I'm not constantly in a place where I'm getting shot at. No, I don't have to embrace it. I have a choice and I have an option. And a lot more people out there have that. And
if I could just jump in real quick, Bill, just to I want to capitalize on this, because the nuance is because this is a powerful thing, a point, and this is what a lot of toxic organizations do, especially as yes, you said military and law enforcement, maybe first responders, those more the tougher, I don't know, I don't even know the right word to describe it, but those tougher cultures, or they're trying to be, I don't know, whatever the dynamic is. But it's what the slippery slope of embrace the suck, right? And again, it briefs well, and it sounds bad to the bone, but the slippery slope and potential consequence is that if I am a leader in an organization that has embraced the suck it up kind of mentality or culture, it can really allow me as a leader to slack and or be incredibly toxic because, oh, hey, Bill, embrace the suck, bro. Right? When really the intention is supposed to be, look, hey guys, we're law enforcement, right? We're military. What we do is hard as military, as law enforcement officers. Okay, that's true. What we do on the outside, it should not be hard on the inside.
Right.
I should not feel unsafe in the organization that I'm supposed to be a part of. When I go outside to in the military to kind of fight the enemy, so to speak, or an LEO to, interact with and serve the public, I should not be feeling unsafe inside my organization. And so that's where the embrace the suck should not be applied to. It should be applied to what I'm doing outside this organization, not necessarily inside the organization. And again, yes, I get it. Former military guy, Army, infantry, airborne, ranger in the 82nd, all that kind of stuff. Yes, what we do within the organization is hard. We train hard. We work hard. Yes, got it. Embrace the suck. Got it. But in terms of the leadership environment and the leadership culture that is being created within the organization, I should not have to embrace the suck of poor leadership, of toxic leadership, of weak leadership. And I just think that's the slippery slope of that embrace the suck culture.
Oh yeah. Let me say the person that made the statement, I prefer to embrace the suck, had no malice in that statement. They didn't understand what it means. Again, that person had no military background. They've been shot at. Yes. They've had really, we've sat and talked, person was on my negotiation team. So, they've been in some bad situations where they had to embrace the suck, but they were a leader in the organization, and unknowingly what that statement just made me think, we don't have to, you know what I mean? And it got me just thinking, though I've already made my decision to leave at that point, that's it in a nutshell right there. We embrace it too much. Embrace the suck is supposed to be in that moment, in that time, not 4 years, 5 years, 15 years, or in that person, 20 years. That's not embracing the suck. That's living in the suck. And you can only do that for so long before you're emotionally unhealthy forever. You have to make a choice. Am I going to embrace it, or am I going to be the change? And in this organization, you can't be the change unless you're a commander or higher. They don't want to hear what you have to say. They don't care about your leadership. I had a person state to me, I don't know what it's like to run a 12-person shift. I was like, really? So we got in the weeds on. I was like, I'm 12 people is the most you've ever led. Well, yeah. I said, not to toot my horn, but I've led between 5 and 1,200. So I do know what it's like. And I know what it's like in an environment where I get shot blown up every day, not once a week. So this sucks, but it's not the worst. So they discount people's leadership. They discount people's experience and their background when they're coming with the intent of helping and making things better. If it's not their idea, it's not a good idea. Understands like, you know what, I can't wait for change. I need to be the change right now for me and for my family. And that's what it was. So honestly, hardest but easiest decision I made. It's scary. I'm going to a job that's not as dynamic. It's not as active. I don't impact people on a daily basis, but who I do impact is me and my family. I'm at home at night. I'm home on the weekends for the most part, and I'm there. And like it's a recent change, so I'm growing daily with that and being better for the people that count and the people that matter. So it was hard, but that one statement right there really can wrap up all of the crap of dealing with emotionally unintelligent leaders that just dealt with it. They don't know anything different for whatever reason, and some of them it's because they, like me, like you, were afraid to look internally and see what the problem is and what changes need to be made. And like I said, I'm not perfect by no means. I'm in my infant stages of emotional intelligence right now. So, but I can recognize it in myself and in others. And some are taking it. Other people I've spoke to are like, man, you're right. Or man, that really impacted me, what you said there. And to me, I was just saying, hey, this is why, I'm making my choice. This is for me. Not thinking about impacting a broader group, but it did. And it makes me feel good because I know my friends are making the choices and the decisions they need to make for themselves or for their families. So
Boom, man, that's money. Great way to end. So one of the other things I say a lot is emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. And as a result of even though this is the other thing too, Bill, I'm so proud of you, man. Even though you're maybe, like you said, you're a little bit newer in the journey, right, of emotional growth, even with the time that you have invested in getting healthier, not only have you already impacted yourself and your family, you are impacting those around you who are, willing to listen, and because the relationship they had with you or whatever. So to the point of that quote, emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. And the cool thing is that it's not like you or I are necessarily, we are the pinnacle of emotional health and fitness, right? Because I sure as heck am not still. Even though I'm 4 years into this emotional fitness journey, I still have a lot more to do. But that you are already impacting people, and you're a couple months in, I'm impacting people, and I'm a few years in. I'm just thankful that wherever we're at on our journey, we can be making a difference as we're inching along in each of our respective journeys. And again, dude, I'm just so thankful for you, and I appreciate your openness, your transparency, your willingness to share your story, your journey, and some insights with us. Thank you so much for your time. What's the best way, if someone has a question, maybe they got a question about being a law enforcement officer, maybe they got a question about being a security police in the Air Force, or doing negotiations, or even more about your own story, what's the best way for people to connect with you or reach out with you if they have questions for you?
Honestly, probably the easiest way is to email me through my email, WilliamProctor1974 @gmail.
Perfect. William Proctor 1974 @gmail. I'll make sure those are in the show notes too. If you want to reach out to Bill, please feel free to do so. Again, wealth of knowledge, wealth of information. Thank you so much. Totally appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you. And I appreciate all our talks and what you do for people. Man, I spread your podcast out to everybody I could think of to at least help them a little bit. So thanks for what you're doing.